Hello, 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 everybody, and this is Derek with Reef Automation. In this video, we're going to go over my top 10 automation mistakes. I know Bulk Reef Supply does something kind of similar, but I thought from my point of view, what I've noticed that I see and some things I've done in the past that I've made mistakes on. And I thought I'd go through just a small video on my top 10 mistakes for automation to go hand in hand with the Bulk Reef Supply videos. So the first thing we're going to go over is programming too many alarms. So no matter what controller that you guys have, you can have tons and tons of alarms. And what I've noticed is if you program too many of them, you're going to get lots of alerts that are just going to totally drive you crazy throughout the day. So I've limited my alerts to very specific and important things. I make sure that my alarms are not a very narrow band for my probes, and I make sure that I only get alarms on things that are extremely important. Now, for people that travel a lot, having a lot of alarms is a good thing. But again, I found that having so many alarms just completely ruins your day if you're doing something fun with your family and then you get these alarms of, oh, my salinity's low, or oh, my pH went up a little bit. Just be aware, the more alarms you have, the more it's going to just interrupt your day. Number two is something that I've thought about multiple times, and that, again, with any controller, having one central controller or one brain that controls all of your tanks. Now, as you might or may not know, I have three tanks, and I've been running a single Apex on them for, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years now without any issues. But I've noticed over time that it does become cumbersome just to do basic tasks. Like if I just want to go to my Nano over here and turn on the maintenance mode, I got to flip through a bunch of pages to get to it. That's why I've been adding controllers here and there to do different things for different tanks. In the commercial realm, I guess you can say, it might be a good idea to have one brain for all your tanks, but I think it's a mistake in general, especially for redundancy, to have one thing that's taking care of your entire system. Number three is a very important thing that I notice a lot of people doing, and that's placing the heater inside the return tank where your temp probe is. I've noticed that if you put the heater anywhere near the temp probe, you'll get these very erratic temperatures. So my recommendation has always been don't put your heater near your temp probe. One thing, big mistake is not having enough leak detectors. I have tons of leak detectors, and I feel that that is one of the most important things to have. A lot of people have controllers with no leak sensors. I think at least one leak sensor in the system is very important. You never know when something's going to leak. I have leak sensors under my pumps. I have leak sensors under my tanks. I have leak sensors next to my sumps. I have leak sensors next to my chiller. Um, you know, in my case, I use Apex and they're very small. Hydros has a rope that you can put behind your sump. Have a leak sensor, I think, is an important thing. Not having enough of them is the mistake here because you don't need to have a leak sensor every couple inches, but in the most important areas, I would recommend having a leak sensor. Number five is using optical sensors in bad areas, and I am notorious for doing this. Optical sensors, when they get dirty or get full of salt or any type of grime, they tend to just stop working. So my recommendation here is always put your optical sensors in a very clean area. For instance, don't put them inside a calc stirrer. Don't put them inside a dosing container that is going to be doing any type of mixing whatsoever. You can generally put them in a saltwater mixing container because saltwater obviously isn't going to cause any issues. But if your saltwater starts to get that brown gunk, if you have optical sensors, eventually they'll just fail. So just make sure you're either cleaning your optical sensors often and looking at them and viewing them, or making sure, of course, that you just don't use optical sensors in areas you shouldn't be. Number six is trying to bring up pH. Now, this is a interesting thing on an automation list because there's so many things that you can do to try to bump up your pH, and I've done just about all of them. CO2 scrubber, line outside the house, calc stir, calc dripping, you name it, I've tried it. Bubbling into rocks, bubbling into these big containers that's supposed to raise your pH, and I've just never had success. So My mistake here is just trying all these different methods of automation. I've bought so many products to try to increase my pH, and I just gave up. I have a pretty high pH. It runs at about 8.0 to 8.1. But those that are trying to get 8.2, 8.3, I think a lot of it is environmental and where you live if you're going to be able to increase that pH. So don't buy a bunch of automation stuff to try to get your pH up. Number seven is not using a par meter, one of the most important tools that you can have. Make sure you're using a par meter so that you're not burning your corals when you're not supposed to be, and vice versa, not giving them enough light. I'm notorious for not using a par meter, and I just bit the bullet and I bought one, and it's been a saving grace for me whenever I'm making any changes to my lighting. This is one of my biggest pet peeves, I think, in the hobby in general, but specifically in the automation, is blaming the product and not the person. And I say this because I have a lot of people that comment to me about different products, and I'm not going to name specific products that they've had issues with, that breaks on them, and then I go and find out that this person, for instance, plugged in a 1,000-watt heater into this device that's not meant for it, or they'll put, someone had mentioned about a feeder one time where they put this huge piece of flake food, I think it was in, and it got stuck in there and it grinded it up. And I'm looking, I'm like, how can you be upset with the product when you're the one that did it? So blaming the product and not the person. So my recommendation here is whenever you buy a product, make sure you read the directions, make sure you read what it's capable of. If you're plugging something into a controllable outlet, make sure you know how much amperage that outlet can hold. Make sure that you're not increasing that amperage. And you got to remember, electricity throughout the day can fluctuate. So just make sure you're within the correct bounds of the product before you start blaming the equipment. One of my biggest mistakes is not starting this channel sooner. Maybe had I started this channel a little bit earlier, it's possible that we wouldn't have as many mistakes in the automation hobby. We wouldn't have as many of these pictures of people having so many tank fails due to their automation. So I think had I done this a little bit sooner, and I encourage other people as well, I think it's a valued asset in the hobby for us to learn about automation. And of course, number 10, not buying a reef bot. Of course, you guys knew that was going to be on my list. Don't buy a reef bot if I haven't explained that to you before. I've had numerous issues with mine. Um, and yeah, that's my automation mistake list. It's very basic, very simple, but hopefully you guys learned something from this, just a real basic top 10. I'll have a couple more of these coming out that I have some ideas on. So hopefully you liked it, and if you did, go ahead and hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Thank you.